Oh, and it looks like I may have been muted for just a second, so let's go ahead and get started. So here's the panel. I'm not sure exactly how much was missing. I'm not sure how I got muted, but sorry about that, everyone. So this is, we have a panel of 2 guest experts and myself today. Raquel Ellison, she's the executive coach and organizational development consultant and founder of Reworking Parents, and you can learn more about the work that she does at raquelellison.com. She's worked with accomplished professionals on professional branding, career choices, and more, and we're very happy to have her here. Hello, Raquel.
Hello. Sorry, I was muted for a second there myself. Hi. Nice to be here. I'm so happy to be with everybody today.
Great. Thanks for coming. And we also have Britt Montemayor. She's a recruiting and relationship manager at American Express, and she works in American Express's relationship care recruiting specifically. She was previously with McKesson and Robert Half International, and you can learn more about American Express and the types of flexible jobs that they offer and all of that good stuff on the FlexJobs website, and there's the address there for more information on those types of jobs. And Britt, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Hello, everyone.
Hello, and I'm glad that you know how to work your mute button, because I certainly apparently don't. And that's me. I'm Bree Reynolds. Like I said, I'm the Director of Online Content at FlexJobs, but I've also been a career and job search advisor for about 10 years now. I started out at a college. I'm doing college career advising for students and alumni, so I just love offering people career advice and helping them kind of find their way through all this sort of stuff. So happy to have our panel here, and let's talk about some of the topics that we're going to get to. Oh, and it looks like, here we go. Now you'll be able to see my screen. Thanks, Jen, for the heads up, or Britt. And so some of the topics that we'll be talking about today, the different types of flexible work options for moms returning to work, how to get your mindset and materials in order, handling the gap in your work history, what employers typically look for, and a question and answer session, as I mentioned before, to talk about any questions that you have related to flexible work. And just in case that was muted as well, we will be having a question and answer session at the end of the webinar, and this session will be recorded, so you'll be receiving a link to that recording. So sorry about the technical difficulties up here at the front of it, but hopefully that means we'll have a smooth presentation for the rest of the hour. So again, thanks everyone for joining us, and I'm just going to jump into a little bit about flexible work options for moms returning to work. Kind of the lay of the land of what we're seeing at FlexJobs. So there's about 3 different things to consider when we're thinking about a flexible job, and especially for moms returning to work, flexible jobs can be a fantastic way to kind of make that transition back into work and to sort of best balance all of the different things you have going on. And that's whether you're kind of a brand new mom or you've been out of the office, so to speak, raising kids for many years and anywhere in between. So one of the first things that you want to think about is the location. Do you want to be working from home or working in an office? Obviously, the more flexible option for most people is to work from home. So if you're interested in doing that sort of thing, that's one thing to consider. And then your work schedule. There are all sorts of different flexible schedules. There's flexible, alternative. Flexible really means that you can work sort of any hours that you deem appropriate, working with your manager, of course, to figure that out, but that you are really in control of your schedule each day, and you can kind of work the hours that work best for your particular needs. An alternative schedule is one that's more of a set schedule. The employer controls that schedule, but you aren't working traditional 9 to 5 office hours. So it may be an evening shift, it might be nights and weekends, any sort of, something like that where it's not that traditional schedule. But in this case, it's more that the employer has the control over what that schedule is versus yourself. With a flexible schedule, you mainly have the control. So the 2 things to consider there. A compressed work week is where you would compress a 40-hour work week into 4 days instead of 5. So you might work Monday through Thursday and have Fridays off. You might work Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and have Wednesdays off. And you will kind of be able to work that out with the different employers. But these are all, I should say, keywords that you should be looking for as you conduct your job search and you're kind of looking to see what's out there. These are all different keywords that you can look for to determine if a job is flexible or to find the specific types of flexibility that you need. There's also, of course, part-time schedules, and that can be part-time from home. It can be part-time in an office, and full-time schedules, of course. And then short-term or long-term assignments. So that actually brings us into number 3, which is the control autonomy piece of flexibility. So we've talked about location and work schedule. And the next one is control and autonomy. It really has to do with whether you're an employee, a freelancer, a contractor, and then we also have options if you're searching on FlexJobs for intern, temp, and volunteer, depending on how you kind of want to approach the whole process. And so really, as an employee, you are an employee of a company. So the control really sort of rests on the employer's shoulders, whereas if you're a freelancer or a contractor, it's really on your shoulders. And I should say the control and the freedom that comes with that, but also all of the responsibilities that come with that. And so that's something to consider too. Do you really want to be completely in control and kind of almost self-employed in a way as a freelancer or a contractor, picking up some short-term or long-term projects, or would you rather have that kind of consistency of being an employee and sort of over the long term having that regularity in your work experience? So these are all the three main things that you want to consider when you're thinking about flexible work options and what would work best for you. And so really when you're coming back to work, these are sort of the things you want to focus on. So just to give you an idea of what's out there as far as flexible jobs go, we've seen a lot of growth over the last few years in flexible work options, flexible job listings, and these are some of the career fields with the most telecommuting and flexible job listings that we see. And the reason that I put 14 different career fields up here is because if we did a top 10, you'd kind of miss those extra ones that over time come in and out of that top 10. So this 14 really does give you an idea of the huge variety of flexible jobs and industries that are hiring for flexible jobs, and just know that it's kind of fluid and depending on the month, depending on hiring needs, these may change in order, but they're always really at the top of this list. So there's medical and health, which is actually a lot of surprise to a lot of people that is at the top slot, and it almost always is number 1 as far as the most telecommuting and flexible job listings. But it is really a big industry when it comes to this sort of thing. And then sales, customer service, administrative, you guys can see the whole list there. But really, it's just a wide variety of opportunities that are available. I will say if you don't see your career field here or a career field that you're interested in, I don't want you to feel discouraged. It's not that doesn't exist. We actually list jobs in over 100 categories and subcategories of careers. So if you don't see it here, it doesn't mean that there's no flexibility available in your particular career area. It just means it's not at the very top of offering the most number of job listings. But I would definitely check it out. And you can see all of the categories that we list at flexjobs.com/jobs. That'll get you right to our categories list so you can kind of see what's out there. And so some common flexible job titles, also just to give you an idea, similar to those career fields that we were looking at, what is available, what should you be looking for. These are the most common flexible job titles that we see. And the way we determine this list is by asking our job research team. We have a team of, I think, about 14 now job researchers who spend their work days going out and trying to find flexible job listings to post onto FlexJobs. And they search all sorts of places to find these listings, and we also have relationships with employers who come directly to FlexJobs to post, and these tend to be the top job titles that we see on a regular basis. And so, it's everything from something as common as writer. I mean, you would think, of course, writer is pretty flexible. Consultant, which is kind of a very wide-ranging job title that can handle a lot of different career fields or describe a lot of different careers. And then things that are less expected, SEO marketing assistant or adjunct faculty. We have a lot of teaching positions now that are done online, a lot of virtual education components. So again, just to give you a wide variety of the options that are out there to show you sort of what the possibilities are. And I think that's really, a good place to start is thinking of what's possible, and then also what do you want to do. And we'll, of course, get into a lot more of that type of advice with the rest of our panel. And then here are just some tips for the keywords that you can use in your job search. So if you are interested in working from home, some of the keywords that you might look for are remote, virtual, telecommuting, or distributed team. We see those words on a regular basis coming up in different job listings, so hopefully that'll help you to pinpoint the different roles that are available as far as working from home goes. And then for scheduling, we talked about this a little bit before, but we have flexible schedules, flex time, alternative schedule, flexible hours, and ROW is a results-only work environment, which is essentially the ultimate in flexibility. There are no schedules, there's no set anything really. You work from home, and it's all about the results that you get. So these are just some keywords related to scheduling that might help your search to bring up the right jobs that you're looking for. And then the type of employment. So freelance, we talked about. Of course, employee jobs are generally just listed as regular job listings, but freelance jobs often have these types of keywords in them. So if you're looking for something that's more project-oriented or freelance, these are the ones to look for. So we've got contract position, independent contractor, freelance job, freelancer, or project role. We tend to see combinations of these different keywords related to freelance job listings. So just kind of an overview of some of the terms that you should be searching for, the career fields that hire the most flexible workers, and the job titles that are really popular when it comes to flexible jobs. And hopefully that gives you at least a fairly good overview of the flexible job market itself and what's out there for you. But now we're going to get into kind of that nitty-gritty stuff that we talked about. So the process of going back to work, how do you actually do it, all of that. And first up, we're going to talk with Raquel. And I guess, the main question is that we hear from a lot of people is, how do you get started? What are some of the steps that you recommend to people to take just at that first instance when they've decided that they want to go back to work?
That's a great question. Thank you so much. And again, I'm so glad to be here. So, one of the things that I think is so important about the path back to work is, and you actually mentioned this and talked about it so nicely in the past few minutes, but the difference between seeing possibilities and just sort of feeling like you're drawn back into the job market, exactly into the place that you left. Your whole life has sort of changed after becoming a parent, whether you left the workforce for a long period or a short period of time. So being able to see what's possible and think about things a little bit differently than you did possibly when you left. To look at, I talk to people about exploring options and different models that they see around them. So taking a look, first and foremost at people around you in your life, either online or off. Think about, their work in life and something that excites you about what they're doing, and then sort of be able to make a mental note of that, and start to think about, those examples in terms of yourself. What does that make you think about the kind of task you'd like to work on, the kind of role you'd like to be in, the kind of company culture that would really appeal to you, and what you need in terms of flexibility. And then I talk to people about, how do you catalog everything that you've done, your experience, your skills, your accomplishments, and craft it into a pitch, and then go out there and talk to as many people as possible about what you're bringing to the table. So that's what I suggest people do.
Great.
First.
Yeah.
Go through that process.
Sounds like a good plan. Thank you.
Sure.
And then how can parents, I know we're talking to working moms in particular, but I think we have a few dads on the call too, but how can parents use their parenthood experience as an asset rather than seeing it as a detriment? I feel like so many people are nervous about how that's going to look to employers and what that says, that they've been out of work for a while, and how can they kind of flip that around and use it to their benefit?
Yeah, this is such a good question, and I hear it all the time. I think that, the confidence needs to start with you. I think it's so important that you don't come and approach the process of looking for work by sort of apologizing, or trying to make excuses or give explanations for why, you've been out of the workforce. It's a wonderful, being a full-time parent lends, I think, to great insights and experiences that can help you in the job. I think it helps people become much more focused, build authenticity and confidence. It helps people really recognize how to enforce boundaries, and a lot of times that can be an asset to employers. So I think reframing the experience, instead of sort of seeing this as a negative, really seeing how it's added to your life in terms of the skills and the sort of training that it's given you. It's really important to reframe that.
Yeah, absolutely. That mindset is very important. And another thing that we often hear questions about is the gap in the resume, that infamous gap. And I loved when you did your presentation with us last year, you called it "Never mind the gap." It was sort of, get over it in a good way, And so what should parents or moms do about that gap in their resume? How can that kind of be handled, or at least what are some of the starting steps to handling that?
Well, I think it's really important, and I would start with the same point that I chimed in with when you asked me the last question. I think it really is up to you to find the highlights of your experience and to find confidence in your story and your experience and to be able to convey that through your materials. But I think really being able to, and I alluded to this sort of in the beginning as well, being able to think through your experiences. I have people really dive into the experiences they're most proud of, that they feel should be featured at the top of their list, and really break those down to be able to show employers, this was a situation, this was a task that I completed, and these were the accomplishments that I had, and these are the results. So it's called the STAR method. I find that really breaking down the things that you're most proud of and lending, giving words around sort of what tasks you felt like you used in the process, and also what results that generated. It's a really important part of the process. But I think really, the short answer is capitalizing on and building on what is in your resume and what you want to talk about in terms of experiences, both that you had on the job before you took a break from work, and then while you were on break there could have been volunteer experiences or consulting or freelance experiences that you had, and that you should really speak to all of them, the ones that you're most proud of and that you're most excited about.
Great. And actually, for the audience's benefit, can you go over the STAR again and what STAR actually stands for, each of the steps?
Sure. So the situation, so S for situation, and then task, T for task. So what situation, what was happening in your company, or what were you asked to do, and then what was the task that you accomplished? How did you work to get the job done? And then what are the accomplishments? What did you achieve at the end of the process or the project that you were working on? And then results, how did that impact the organization that you were working with, or the project or the team that you were working on? How can you quantify that in some way? So I think breaking those down and being able to speak in that STAR framework really helps you to understand, not just to see the sort of blur of experience that you've had, but to really break it down into these specifics that can really paint a nice picture of your experience and what you like to do and what your skill sets are.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
And just a reminder for the audience, if you do have any questions as we're going through, please feel free to put them in your GoToWebinar control panel questions box. If you don't see that, you can click the little orange arrow that's on your screen, and the control panel will pop up and you'll be able to see the questions area. And so we'll either be able to answer those questions now or at the end of the webinar. So don't hold back if you've got them. Please feel free to put them in there now. It's no problem. And so then one other question kind of in this line of topic is, where should moms, once you've kind of got your mindset right, you have sort of flipped your frame on the experience that you've had as a parent, and you're kind of ready to really get into this, where should moms be spending most of the time in their job search process? What are some of the most, profitable areas for job searching, and where do you really, suggest people focus their efforts?
From my perspective, I think it's networking.
Mm-hmm.
I think when people learn to, go through that process individually, where they're refining their pitch, they're thinking about their experiences, they're thinking about what they want in terms of task, in terms of role, in terms of context, and then, really talking to as many people as you can, whether they be, potential employers or contacts who might be able to link you up to jobs, or other parents. I find that, talking to other parents who might be working in a field that you are interested in or in a company that you might want to check out further, and just sort of giving them a little elevator pitch about who you are and what you're looking for. I think it's invaluable to sort of just have those one-on-one interactions to hear their feedback, and to continue to refine and build that confidence around what you're pitching. The more meetings and conversations you have with people, the more leads you generate, the more your confidence you build around being able to present yourself. I think it's absolutely critical. So there's the in-person networking. I also think, using tools like LinkedIn, to start networking online is really important, to be able to find, there's so many groups on LinkedIn that I encourage clients to use. On Twitter also, people who are in your target, job area, someone who's working in a field that you want to work in, or who have interests that are related to the work that you do. It's great to just start to get involved in conversations online and off, to be able to jump back into that process and get connections quickly. I also think attending events, in person, meetup events, not too many of them. I think that doesn't have to be the only place that you meet professional contacts as you're transitioning back to work. But I think it's a great place to just, jump right in and get your feet wet and just start pitching and start meeting a lot of new people. I also recommend, that as part of the networking process, that clients really invest time every day in sort of reaching out to a bunch of contacts. One of the tools that I like to use, and they don't sponsor me or anything, I just am a big fan, it's called Contactually, and it organizes all of your contacts from Gmail, from your various email clients, from Facebook, from LinkedIn, and it gives you updates on all of these different people, and it reminds you every day to reach out to 10 of those people, or however many people you sort of choose. It kind of keeps you very disciplined about the process of reaching out to people when you're going through which is especially critical as you're transitioning back to work and looking for new opportunities. So that's really what I think is yields the most interesting results.
Yeah, I agree too. And it's interesting, just in working from home, if you're looking to work a flexible job or something like that, I think you'll be surprised if you start talking to your neighbors and asking them what they're doing, how many people are actually working from home in your neighborhood. I know I've been really surprised to learn how many people are doing that here. And yeah. Just starting those conversations, and with networking, I feel like there's always that end goal in mind that you feel like this should be working towards something, but really just focusing on the conversation itself. And I think you'll be really sort of surprised. And then just asking, once you find out your friends and neighbors that have flexible jobs, how did you get that flexible job? Where did you hear about it? And all that sort of stuff. It's surprising how many people are already doing that. And I think that's a great place to get recommendations as far as for flexible jobs in particular, how to find those too.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's a great way to jump in and get started.
Yep. And Contactually, is that the program?
Contactually, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I get a couple people saying, wait, what was that?
Yeah, I love it. I have a lot of tools that I love. That's one of them.
Awesome. Well, thank you for kind of the overview, Rahel, and we will we'll definitely be getting back to you in the question and answer session at the sort of in another 10 or 15 minutes or so. But I think this is sort of a great overview just to kind of get people thinking about their situations and talking about it. And I know the questions are starting to roll in, so you've really got people thinking. So
okay,
throw some more questions at you in a little bit. And then Britt from American Express, let's hop over to you and kind of see, get your insights, especially from the employer's perspective. I know a lot of people on the webinar right now are talking about how they've been out for a long time, years, maybe even for a decade, and sort of, from the employer's perspective, I think they're really wondering, how does that look? How can I get back into this? And so first, just in particular from American Express's point of view, I would love to hear more about how they kind of recruit and support working moms and what your experience has been in that so far.
Well, for American Express, we have a very unique kind of a viewpoint when we are looking for candidates. Oftentimes, we are really just looking for people who have the drive to give excellent customer service. So we want people who have a true passion for delivering great customer service, building customer loyalty, who have great listening skills, relationship building skills. So, there's times when we often don't require that you have the exact experience for a role, especially for one of our largest places that we recruit within American Express is for our customer care professionals, which is a customer service type of a role, talking with our card members. So, we really look for people who are passionate, who have that special something that it's also, independent and creative, and people who want to give that consultative approach. So that's just one piece of what we look for. The other thing that's really important to us and to most employers who employ people who work from home, full-time virtual roles, is we really want to understand if you've worked in a virtual position before, if you get how hard it can be, and if not, help you to understand that. So we might ask questions around, have you worked in a virtual position? Have you worked alone without face-to-face interaction? So sometimes working alone without that face-to-face and having no colleagues around you or customers in front of you can be difficult, so you have to understand what those challenges are. So understanding the challenges that come with a virtual role. Have you been through that before? We're going to want to know that. We're going to want to know that you've been able to work through that. You've been able to maintain relationships in your organization, that you've been able to manage your time, balance your life, because most of our roles, if they are customer-facing, have a very strict schedule. So even though you're working from home, you've got to be able to figure out how you can set yourself up for success. And we actually have some really neat people who work for us that are stay-at-home moms, but are also working for us full-time, and sometimes they're able to get schedules with split shifts or with those non-traditional hours. So that's one of the big things is the virtual fit. So if you've never done it before, how do you think you would overcome those challenges if you were hired? How do you think you'd be satisfied working in a home-based position? A lot of people go, oh gosh, working at home would be fantastic. I can work in my jammies all day and do whatever you want to do and do laundry in between. And the hard fact is that most times that's just not possible. So you got to figure out is the schedule that you can get something that would work with balancing your personal life and work. So that's one of the things. Does that answer the question well?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think it kind of gives a good picture of what it would be like in those types of roles and how a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home parent, I should say, could transition themselves into that sort of area.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so we have a lot of areas that we hire in that are 100% virtual, and a bulk of that happens to be within our global travel business. So we look for travel counselors, we look for customer service within travel and within our regular card member business. We look for meeting and group assistant planners. We even sometimes get executive assistant roles. And if you've never worked in the travel business before, a lot of community colleges offer certificate programs. They'll teach you how to use the systems. They'll teach you how to work within the travel business. So if it's something that really interests you, then there's a lot of options for being able to get that certification to be able to move into a role within travel. But aside from travel, we also have a lot of positions within sales. So with American Express, positions for business development, even for global implementation consulting. We also have technology roles that are 100% virtual. So if you worked in technology before, or that's a passion of yours and you're going to school for it, things like software engineers, quality assurance engineers, analytics, those are also some of the areas. So it's not just customer service that can be home-based. We actually have a lot of different areas that we recruit for. So it's just something else to think about. If you're making that transition and you have a passion in one of those areas, get a certification, or if you're already in school for programming or anything within technology, there's options for work from home full-time with American Express.
Great. And as far as, I know we've gotten a couple questions, with those types of roles, are they virtual from the get-go, or is it something where you have to work in the office and then you would transition to the virtual component?
Almost all of these are 100% virtual. I think there are some times in the job postings that it may say that they want you to be within 50 miles of one of our larger offices, but that's not the majority of them don't require that. So it's just something to look at in the job posting. They may want you to be somewhere near that, but overall the majority of them are start from home.
Great. I think a lot of people will probably be clapping. And so I guess, another thing is sort of what does American Express typically look for? I know you talked about some of the attributes that really make somebody who works from home successful. And then what sort of makes an application stand out from the pack? What can some of these moms and dads on the call do that really help their application stand out?
So going actually along some of the things that Raquel mentioned earlier, your resume is a strong tool for you to have, and I suggest that in your resume you really take stock in what you've done. Look at what you've done. Maybe while you were not working, you were helping out with the family business. Maybe you did the payroll for your husband's business or wife's business, or maybe you built a website. So keep in mind those things that you've done and how to put those skills onto your resume, because when you get asked about that gap, or when that gap is identified, we want to see what you did during that time. Maybe you also took on additional education. So being able to list those skills out in your resume in that kind of gap area is really going to be helpful. And don't use terms, so this is one thing that I've seen before, and I suggested against it, but don't use terms like, domestic diva or homemaker.
Domestic diva, I like that.
Yeah, and I think that there was a period of time where it was, something that was considered kind of cute or, creative to say, but now it doesn't come off quite as well. So really highlight those skills in your resume. And then another thing I suggest is, if you are passionate about an area of business, using the tools that Raquel mentioned, like LinkedIn, get in touch with someone to do an informational interview. Informational interviews are a wonderful tool, and it may be someone within your network, someone that like Raquel had mentioned, you know some other parent who works in some other job from home, or a company that you're interested in, and do an informational interview. Ask those questions. What is it like to work in this position? Does it really fit with what your expectations are? And there's a lot of information out on the internet about informational interviews, what questions to ask. And that's one really wonderful way to actually spend some time with someone when you're not trying to get a job from them, but they can give you advice on what maybe you need to do to get into the field that they're in, that you're interested in.
I think that's a great tip, too. I'm so glad you brought that up, because it really, I think a lot of it is that pressure, like we were talking about with networking, that you're looking for a job, and the person that you're speaking with feels pressured, even if you're not saying it outwardly, that they ought to be helping you in some way. And I think an informational interview is a nice way to kind of take the pressure off and really just use it as an educational experience for yourself. And I know for a lot of people who are asking, sort of, how do I start? What are the first steps to take? That can be a really kind of nice, I don't know if the word's easy, but a nice one to start out with. Great, thank you very much. And I think we've got so many good questions coming in that I would love to kind of open it up to the question and answer session. And I think this is actually a good one for Britt also. about references. So you've been, somebody's been out of work for a while and they are, wondering who to put as references. Should it still be those managers that they'd worked with all those years ago? Should it be someone more current? And if so, maybe who?
So from my viewpoint, we actually don't do a lot of calling on references, so I don't even recommend that you put it on your resume. That typically will come up at the application point where we may ask for that. But I would say if you know those people are still at that company, or if you've kept touch with them and they've moved to another company, but you still have relevant contact information and they can give you a good reference, I would say you offer that up. The other thing I would suggest is any of the areas that you've worked in but not been paid in while you've been as a stay-at-home parent, those people can also give you references. So if you volunteered on the PTA, if you volunteered at your church, and you were in charge of anything, those people can be good references for your volunteer work.
Great, perfect ideas. Thank you. And Raquel, do you have anything else that you wanted to add for sort of references or just even, people to keep in mind in that way for your job search?
I think really being able to tap into, other parents who've seen you actively participating in, community activities or school, PTA type of activities. I think you can really reach out to a group of contacts who know you to kind of help give you feedback and be able to speak on your behalf. But I just wanted to second earlier what Britt said about informational interviews and really reaching out and kind of testing that out. I think that was a great point. So I think it's really important to reach out across your network and go on LinkedIn and find people to be able to talk to you about that.
Yeah, and actually that's a perfect transition to the next question. We're getting a lot of questions about LinkedIn and ideas for sort of setting that up. You have that headline space, you have the summary space, and if you've been out of work for a while, what do you put in those areas? Do you put that you're searching to get back into a career field? Do you say that you are a part of that career field? How do you kind of suggest that people frame themselves if they are just getting back into an active job search? And that could be for Raquel.
Oh, okay, yeah. Not sure which one. I think that's a great question. I think what's really important is to go through a process where you've had these conversations, you've done some thinking about it, and you do have a sense of what is the task that you really want to be focused on getting, what's the role, what kind of context you want to be working in, and you can absolutely phrase your headline, looking for a position in X or Y, right? Or, X and Y professional looking for a position in this industry. I think that's a great thing to do on LinkedIn. I think you can also just, post your headline with the kind of, depending, obviously everyone's situation is different depending on the level of experience that you're bringing. I definitely think you can, if you were an HR professional before you left work and took a break, you can say you're an HR professional again. If you're pivoting and changing fields a lot more than that, you might want to modify, the way that you say it or the way you phrase what you're looking for. But I think definitely feel confident to put that as your headline.
Great. Yeah, I think a lot of this is sort of confidence building too.
Absolutely. 200%.
Yep. And for Britt, this question actually goes back to something that you mentioned about American Express offering a split shift, and people are kind of wondering, what is a split shift? I think it probably falls under the category that we were talking about before of alternative schedules, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have opportunities, especially with our customer care professional positions, where a person may be able to work for 4 hours in the morning. So maybe they work in the morning from 6 to 10, or from 8 to noon, and then they take a few-hour break, which maybe allows them to pick up the kids or do something else that they normally would like to be doing during the middle of the day. And then once their spouse is back and can handle the kids, then they go back and finish up with 4 more hours of work. And we have some people, there's actually some really wonderful videos that we just did on our website, and both of the women that are featured in those customer care professional videos, one has a young child and works from home, and how she's been able to structure that to work. And then the other person has grown children, but also helps care for her elderly parents. So she works a split shift, and it allows her to spend some of those hours during the day with those parents and then be able to finish up in the afternoon. So it's just that ability to do that. Some people don't want it at all, but if it works for you and if that's something you'd like, there's options for that.
Yeah, it's great to know that option exists, and really good examples there, both with the mom who works from home and has a young child, and then, of course, I think that we're calling that group the sandwich generation that sort of, I know, still has younger but grown children, maybe in or out of the house at college, etc., but then also older parents who are needing more care. So they're kind of on double caregiver duty in that split shift. Sounds like it could definitely be a good solution for both groups and probably other groups too.
Yeah.
Great. And so I think we had touched on this briefly, but I would like to talk about it just a little bit more. There's the idea, so there's that gap in your resume, and a number of people are asking, should you address the gap or not address the gap? Is it something that you should sort of, I don't know if the word is pretend, but sort of just not say anything about it and leave that gap on your resume, or should it always kind of be filled, even if it's just an explanation of what you were doing during that time? Raquel, do you have any thoughts on that, about ignoring the gap?
Yeah, ignoring. I think, it'd be interesting to hear your take on this, Britt, but my take is, you put I don't think it's so important to fill in that gap chronologically. As Britt said, as they review your resume, they will see, where there is, which periods were working periods and which periods might not have been. I do think it's important not to completely, pretend it's not there and not speak to it. I think to maybe speak to it in a cover letter, to just sort of talk about it, mention it briefly. Again, not to go into too much detail about it, but just to be able to mention it and acknowledge it and move on. That would be my take.
Yep. Yeah, I like that, and I think thanks for bringing the cover letter into the discussion too, because I think it's an often kind of ignored piece of the application that can definitely come in handy in situations like this. Britt, did you have anything else to add?
So I agree with Raquel. You don't need to chronologically put that gap in there, but I would also, make sure that you do include skills that you obtained during that gap. So make sure that they're on your resume. And then I also agree about the cover letter. And one of the things being directly in recruitment is always make sure, even though it takes extra time, make sure you've tailored your cover letter to each job that you're applying for, because it may look different. If you're applying for one type of a skill related job, you may want to highlight different things on your cover letter as opposed to another type. And there's just nothing more frustrating than reading a cover letter that says I'm interested in being an analyst, and the job you're applying for is customer care. That tells me that you probably don't want to be in customer care very long. So just keep that in mind, that you're tailoring it to the job. And include, some of those skill building things. Maybe it wasn't a glamorous job with things that you did, but, there's leadership opportunities in being a stay-at-home parent. There's leadership opportunities in, handling, whether it be volunteering for teams or other volunteer groups. So include those things that you learned. Did you have to learn how to handle the finances for the Girl Scouts troop or Boy Scouts troop, or so all of those things, patience, organization, highlight that stuff. It's valuable.
Great, good tips. And so going back to the networking conversation that we were having before, because it is such a huge key piece of this process of getting back into work, I guess I'll sort of throw this over to Raquel to cover it first, but Mom is actually asking, since so much of your life as a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home parent revolves around your children, how do you have sort of meaningful conversations with people when a lot of what you are sort of comfortable talking about revolves around kid stuff? How can you kind of load yourself up with some other things to discuss when you're networking?
So just to make sure that I understand the question being, since the normal topic of conversation with other parents is kids, how do you sort of shift it to professional questions?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really excellent question. I think that there is, obviously you get into certain rhythms and you understand people in certain contexts. So you don't, it feels a little bit uncomfortable to kind of just all of a sudden go from talking about play dates to talking about job interviews. But I do think that, it's the sort of thing where, once you've started to think through the things that you are interested in and would like to learn about, if another parent, is involved professionally in a field that you're interested in, sort of think about what exactly you'd like to learn about their experience. And I find that when I encourage clients, or even when I myself talk to people about their careers, people really love to talk about themselves and their experiences. So when, if you sort of frame the conversation as like, well, I'm looking for a job and can you help me, that kind of, I could understand that feeling like almost a very drastic change. But when you go to them and say, I think I heard that you're in this field and I'm kind of interested in that. Could you tell me a little bit more about what you do? It's actually a much more natural transition because they feel like they're answering a question that, feels pretty comfortable and not, gives them an opportunity to let you find out a little bit more about them in that other context. So I would, I definitely understand it feels kind of intimidating to change topics like that. At the same time, I think people, don't discount how much people really like talking about themselves and what they do. So, make sure if it's framed that way, I think you're going to get some really great responses.
Yeah, I think that's a real tip for sure. And yeah, over to Britt, sure.
Actually, I just wanted to tag on to that just a little bit, is that if you talk about your time out of the workforce as if it was a problem, then it comes off negatively. So like Raquel was saying, it's just instead of saying, well, I was a stay-at-home parent and I'm concerned, just bring it right into, I'm really interested in what you're doing, I'm passionate about this or that. So if you introduce it as if it was a problem, then it seems like it was a problem. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep, that's such a good point. It's really, a lot of it is how you frame it. And I'll second what was said about people being really interested in talking about themselves and what they do. I think once you start asking those questions, you'll be surprised at how quickly that conversation, gears up and moves along. So, so yeah, let's see. I know we have a bunch of different questions. I'll try to get to at least a handful more here. Let's try to move over to the job interview process, and I guess Britt would be great to speak about this. How does the interview process work for virtual jobs? We have a number of questions about that.
I'm really glad that you asked. So a couple of things. We actually just implemented a new technology. We were piloting it for a while and now have moved it into our regular process, and it's video interviewing. So we use a platform called HireVue, and there's a lot of information out there about video interviewing on different platforms. But I highly recommend that if you're looking for a virtual position, especially with a company who may not be in your area, you're likely going to need to interview minimum by phone, but most of these larger companies are implementing video interviewing. And this is something that most times you can do as long as you have a smartphone with a forward-facing camera or a tablet with a forward-facing camera, or if you have a webcam for your home computer. So it is probably one of the most uncomfortable things for people to do the first time. So just mentally prepare yourself for what it will be like to simply be talking to a camera. We do 2 different levels actually now 3 different levels of video interviewing for our customer care professional roles. The first one is a video where it's just yourself. So you're reading the questions that are on the screen, and then you are responding to them, and your answers are recorded. We try to give a lot of tips to people, to make sure you're in a quiet place, make sure you're in a place that has a very plain background, so there's nothing influencing your interview that may be behind you, and make sure that you're dressed appropriately. Even though it's a virtual role, you want to dress in a business attire. It doesn't necessarily have to be a suit, but at least minimal business casual. And then the second level of our video interviewing is with one of our recruiters. So it's a live interview through that video. You'll see the recruiter, they see you, and you'll be going through a regular interview as if you're face-to-face. And then the last level is either a panel or an individual video interview with the hiring leader. So again, on video, just as if you're having a face-to-face conversation. So that is one of the things that we do. For a lot of our other roles, if it's something, they even use that actually in our technology division. The same thing they use these higher view interviews where it's video interviewing. There are some of our roles where you wouldn't video interview, but you would be doing maybe several levels of phone interviewing.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good process to practice. That's for sure. I would definitely want to practice if I were going into that.
Yeah, and I recommend, whether you're interested in working for American Express or for another company, there are a lot of big companies who use the video interviewing, and if you look at a site like HireVue, they'll show you what companies use it. They'll show you like what companies that they work with. So keep that in mind, and they'll show you what it looks like, and what the process feels like. So
great. And I would also say, this is a tip I received from a different webinar that we did this year, that if you're looking for sort of skills and things to add to your resume, and you're looking for flexible jobs in particular, or working from home specifically, any sort of technology that you've used that allows you to collaborate virtually with people, whether it's Skype, it could be GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, that sort of thing. Anything that you've had experience with that helps you work virtually can certainly be listed as telecommuting technology knowledge on your resume. It's one of those ways to kind of show that you're comfortable operating in this kind of environment. What we're doing here right now, I know a lot of it is through people talking and asking questions through chat and typing, but it still is sort of an example of what it might be like to communicate online. So just thinking about all the different things that you've used, we're so connected now personally, but a lot of those ways that we stay connected can be used as just proof that you may have what it takes to operate in a virtual environment.
That is an excellent point. Excellent. Another thing, so tools to think about, like Microsoft Communicator is something that people use in a lot of offices, or you may have used for school. I love seeing Skype. Any of those tools that do, like Bree just said, that show your ability to use telecommuting tools is fantastic.
Great. And then I guess just any sort of final tips or thoughts for our audience. Raquel, do you have anything else that you want to share? Any sort of words of wisdom or inspiration?
No pressure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think that it's really, I can't emphasize enough, I really can't, how important mindset is to this process. One of my favorite researchers and authors on this topic is someone named Carol Dweck, who talks about mindset. She has a book called Mindset, and she talks about fixed mindset and growth mindset. And it's fascinating, I think, a book to read as a job seeker, as a professional, as a parent. There's a chapter on how this kind of thinking and sort of seeing possibilities as opposed to seeing these kind of dead ends it's so important to our success in life. So I really think work on that. It might even feel at the beginning of the process, like it's too, you don't want to spend time on it, but I guarantee that the more time you spend on really focusing on the positive, the more, and really seeing this as opportunities for growth and learning, that the better this process is and the smoother, the more the better the process is going to go for you.
That's great. Really well done on the fly too, because I think that really is a huge good piece of advice to kind of go out on.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. And Britt, anything else that you'd like people to know about American Express, or if anyone is interested in applying for some of the jobs that they'll see on our site for American Express, should they mention this webinar when they apply? Oh, is Britt there? I think we may have.
Oh, am I there?
Sorry, there you are.
Okay. I think it's very helpful to mention that you found us through FlexJobs or attended this webinar. That's very important for us to know. We want to know that you're engaged in taking that next step. And then please do check out our website, put your profile on there, set up a search, look at the opportunities that are there, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I was actually going to say right before Raquel spoke, when you asked if there was any wrap-up thoughts, the same thing was my mind. Embrace that change. Don't be afraid to, do some serious self-examination. See what do you really want to do. Actually, the Growth Mindset book is something that's been very popular with American Express, and I have signs on my my cubicle wall about fostering a growth mindset, tips to moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, because it's all about seeing that opportunity and being prepared to embrace that change. So it's nice to hear that Raquel said that as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Great. And I think the author of that book is Carol Dweck. Is that right?
That's right, D-W-E-C-K.
Perfect. All right. And a few people asking about that, so thank you. Well, a huge thanks to Raquel Ellison and Britt Montemayor and American Express for joining us today on the panel. Thank you both so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. And
thank you.
Yes, thank you. And for anyone who is looking for this recording or the links to Raquel and Britt's websites or jobs, we're going to be sending all of that information in an email that you will receive tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. You'll also receive a quick survey in that email. It seriously is 3 questions, so please take that 30 seconds to fill out that. It really helps us to kind of craft the webinars that we'll be holding in the future. And you'll also, if you're not yet a FlexJobs member or you're not signed up for our newsletter, please feel free to sign up for that using the survey, and you'll get access to a lot of different information and discounts related to FlexJobs and your flexible job search. But I wish you all the best of luck, and thank you all for attending, and best of luck returning to work. Thanks, everyone.